February 9th was the Sunday I was to be with you all and bring a message, and the weather wasn't going to be good, so we set things up in our study at home, and we were going to put a broadcast on Facebook. I started the service. You all don't know this, but I started the service, and I had prayer for you all. And I preached a powerful sermon. Just ask my wife and my dog. They know. About a week ago, I looked at the weather forecast for this weekend, and it was saying the same thing. Praise the Lord, it didn't happen. We are beginning the season of Lent, and Pastor Ian and Pastor Larry and myself would like to lead you through the I am statements found in the Gospel of John. Now, if I were to pick one book of the Bible, it was only one book that I could have, it would be the Gospel of John. It is both simple and easily understood, and yet deep with meaning for our faith journeys. A little trivia for you. How many Johns are mentioned in the Bible? I'll let you guess. Between 1 and 10, how many? Somebody said 10. Do I hear 1? 6? There are 9 of them. 9 of them. Now, in my mind, as I prepared for this and as I studied and reflected on the name John found in the Bible, I wondered if some of these might not be the same person. There's John the Baptist. You all familiar with John the Baptist? There's John, the son of Zebedee, the brother of James. Now, there are a number of Jameses, so don't get confused there either. There's John, the beloved disciple, who is believed to be the author of the Gospel of John. There's John the evangelist. There's John the elder. There's John, the father of Peter. There's John, who was a relative of the high priest Annas. John Mark. Mark's Gospel is named for him, but we know him as Mark. We don't know him as John Mark. And then there's a fellow by the name of John the Divine. Now, who he is, I don't know. I'd have to do some study. We are turning a corner. Today is the second day of March, and it feels like spring is just around the corner. In fact, Debbie called me the other day to go over some things for the bulletin, and I was out in the midst of a cornfield in Chester County looking for rocks. I am a rock hound. Maybe I've told you that before. Just know that if you try to call me on my cell phone, you may find me out in a cornfield. And I was hunting for a mineral called rutile, or rutile, depending on how you want to pronounce it. In York County, Lancaster County, Chester County, just a little background here. Farmers used to bring this stuff into a company called Dentsply in York, and they would sell it to them because it's in your teeth. It was used for making fillings. So anyway, we rockhounds like to go and collect it. Enough of that rabbit trail. We're turning the corner. We're coming out of what I like to think of as the season of darkness. January, February, cold, gray months. Here we are the first week of March, the sun shining. I don't care how cold it is, sun shining. It's a time of year when people tend to get depressed because they don't get enough light. If you turn on your televisions and you watch the news, no doubt it's also a dark time with the dark events in our world. Wars, storms, hurricanes, fires, plane crashes, global uncertainty. Jesus is the light of the world. And in the midst of the darkness, he shines forth. When we look at these I am statements of Jesus found in the Gospel of John, it is begging to answer the question of who is Jesus? Who is he? How do we describe him? What are the things we need to know about Jesus and just who he is in our lives? John, the writer of the gospel, answers this question by recording for us who Jesus says he is 7 different times. And like I said, during the season of Lent, we're going to examine these I am statements. Now, before I go any further, are there any Latin scholars here this morning, people who know how to speak Latin? Anybody? Good. I took it long ago in high school and didn't do very well. Huh? A few words? Do you know what the ego ami is? The ego ami. Any other Latin students? Huh? Amo amasamat, I love, he loves, she loves. Yeah, that's about all I remember. Pardon? Now, that one I don't remember. But the ego ami is the I am statements. There are 7 of them listed. Next Sunday, you're going to be taking a look at the bread of life found in John chapter 6, verse 35. Today, we're going to look at the light. Jesus is the light found in John chapter 8, verse 12, and chapter 9, verse 5. Chapter 10, verses 7 and 9, Jesus is the gate. He says, I am the gate. He is the way in which we get into heaven and go forth. John chapter 10, verses 11 and 14, Jesus says that he is the good shepherd. He cares for us. John chapter 11, verse 25, Jesus is the resurrection and the life. John chapter 14, verse 6, Jesus says that he is the way, the truth, and the life. And then John chapter 15, verses 1 and 5, Jesus is the true vine. So, ego ami, not let go my ego, but the ego ami, the I am statements of Jesus. If I were going to give this sermon a theological title instead of saying I am the light of the world, it would be the Christology. What do we believe about Jesus? A very basic orthodox part of our faith journey is answering this question. Who is Jesus in your life? Not who was he 2,000 years ago. Who is Jesus today? And how does he bring light into your and mine everyday events? The things that we're doing, the places we're going, the people we're interacting with and talking with. When we talk about the I am statements in the Bible, we have to go back to Exodus chapter 3. There's a fellow by the name of Moses, and he's wandering around out in the desert, and he sees a bush that's burning. And the bush isn't being consumed by the flames. So he goes over to check it out. I want to see what's going on here. And when he gets there, the bush, or a voice from within the bush, speaks to him and says, Moses, take off your sandals, for you're on holy ground. And it's God speaking to him. And God tells him that he is the I am. He sends Moses to the children of Israel, and the children of Israel are going to say, who is this God? What's his name? And he's to answer, I am that I am. Well, our text comes from John chapter 8, verse 12. One verse. Jesus spoke again to the people. He said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. I am the light of the world. If you're looking at your bulletin, or if you've looked at your bulletin, you also notice that one of my texts comes from the 9th chapter, the whole chapter. And I've already been asked, are you going to read the whole chapter to us? No, I'm not reading the whole chapter. You can do that later on today at home if you want to. John chapter 9, verses 1 through 41. I like the Gospel of John because John gives us this statement, I am the light of the world, in chapter 8. And then in chapter 9, I believe he explains it or expounds upon it. It's a story of a man born blind. Now, we don't know how old this man was. His parents are still living, according to the text. In Jewish customs, if you were 13 years old or older, you were considered to be a man. And so Jesus is walking and he's talking with his disciples, apparently in the city of Jerusalem. And he sees this man sitting there begging who is born blind. It's also understood that it is the Sabbath day. Jesus goes over to the man, picks up some dirt, spits in it, makes mud. Here's mud in your eyes, so to speak. Puts a little mud in the man's face, on his eyes, and says, go to the pool of Siloam. That's how we know he's in Jerusalem. Go to the pool of Siloam and wash. When he does, he's healed. Now remember this. Up to this point, he has not physically seen Jesus. He doesn't know what he looks like. He doesn't know who he is. In verses 8 to 12, this beggar, this blind man who's been a beggar from birth, tells the story, and the word gets around. Now, I don't know about you, but if a miracle occurred in my life, I would be excited. I would be wanting to tell everybody. I would want everybody to jump up and down and celebrate with me. Word gets to the Pharisees that this miracle occurred on the Sabbath. And the Pharisees, of course, being the religious leaders of the day, get upset. They come after the man that's born blind. They drag him in. They question him about what happened to him and who did this thing. After they get done with him, they bring in his parents and they question them. Now, why is this of any consequence? Stop and think for just a moment. In that day and that age, going to synagogue or temple was where everybody went. It was the social event of your life. Day in, day out, week in, week out. You came together with family and friends. And so the blind man, the parents, they're a little bit concerned. What's going to happen here? The Pharisees question the blind man again. The whole point of this story about this man born blind is who is really blind. Is it physical blindness or is it spiritual blindness? Well, we know the man is healed, and we know eventually he does see Jesus, and they have a conversation. The Pharisees actually get very upset with Jesus because of this. And we're going to cover just a few of those things. The first question raised is why Jesus had to go and heal the man on the Sabbath. Why couldn't he have just waited one more day? Oh, come on, do it the first day of the week. It's not the Sabbath. You're not going to be upsetting the apple cart, so to speak. The guy's been blind from birth, so why not just wait one more day to heal him? The answer is, of course, that John wanted to underline what the New Testament tells readers in another place. In Mark chapter 2, verses 27 and 28, then he said to them, the Sabbath was made for humankind, and not humankind for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. Jesus is Lord of all creation, including time. Now, the second question. John reveals that Jesus' work creates conflict and division. Wait a minute. I thought our God is a God of unity and a God of peace. Righteousness, true godly righteousness, has a way of upsetting things. The neighbors cannot decide, if you read this story, they can't decide if the man that's healed of blindness is the guy that they've known all their lives. What that tells me is they really don't want to get involved. They don't want to be put out of the synagogue by the religious leaders. The blind man's parents are pitted against the religious leaders in the synagogue. The Pharisees contend with one another over the meaning of this healing and the one who has done it. When people do the right thing, it often creates conflict. Well, you didn't do it the way I would have done it. The third and last question I want to raise. John raises the question of who is truly blind. And is it physical blindness or is it spiritual blindness? It seems that the only one who sees begins in the narrative as physically blind, and the one who seems to be sighted and in reality, the Pharisees, are spiritually blind. This is an intentional irony that I think the author John doesn't want us to miss. He even has the Pharisees ask the foolish question, surely we are not blind, in verse 40. We would do well to look carefully at each of these three issues because these are the questions that John wants us to explore. Now, one thing I'd like to point out to you, prophetically speaking from the Old Testament, from the book of Isaiah, the Messiah will be one who gives sight to the blind. And apparently giving sight to a blind person who was born blind has never happened before, at least not recorded. If you go to Isaiah chapter 29, verse 18, chapter 35, verse 5, chapter 42, verse 7, you come across these prophetic statements about the Messiah and what he will be doing. There's a simpler issue at the heart of this story, and it's an issue that I really think is at the heart of what we need to take away from it. It is where John is leading us. Verse 32 says, "Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind." Jesus has just performed a wonderful miracle, a tremendous miracle. Does anyone come to the man born blind and congratulate him on being able to see? It's not recorded in our text. Not one person in this whole story says a word of congratulations or even praise to God, giving thanks to God for this great miracle. I find this odd, and it, to me, is what makes this story come alive. Of all the responses to this miracle that could have been narrated, John suggests not a word of praise to God, not a word of congratulations to the blind man. All the people do in response to the blind one's good fortune is pick his experience apart and disparage and criticize his healing. That's all they do. If you are healed of something, you put the name on it. Maybe it's not physical blindness. Maybe it's something else. And God heals you. Don't you want to celebrate? Aren't you excited about that? How often does this happen in our lives? How often do we want to protect our religious turf as a church and not work together with brothers and sisters of other denominations just because they don't do love feasts or baptism or whatever the same way we do? They are our sisters and brothers in Christ. They have had their spiritual eyes opened as we have had ours opened. And together we should be able to work at bringing the light of Christ into the world. You know, I hear a lot of people complaining that they took away prayer in the public schools. How often do we stop and pray before a meal in our homes when we're together with our families and our loved ones? How often do we spend time in prayer on a given day? Giving thanks, giving praise to God. This is my point. Celebrating the light of Christ in our lives. Whatever area of life it needs to touch. For you, for me, how often is His light missing in our lives? Some folks can't set aside even an hour to celebrate the joy of another person's good fortune. By not mentioning any celebration in this story, I think John reminds us of how petty and how irrelevant we look when we forget to say thanks or to celebrate God's gift of life. Today, this day, this time, this place, is the light of Christ moving in our midst? Is His light touching each one of us? Let's let the light of Christ shine in this dark season. Let's let the light of God's love shine through us. As you go forth from this time and place of worship today, wherever you go, whoever you come in touch with, whoever you speak to, are they going to know that you've been in the presence of Almighty God? Are they going to know that His light is shining in your heart and in mine? I want us to take from this time and place of worship into the world His light. Not just today, but every day. There's something that we do most days when we come to worship, and it probably happens and you don't pay very much attention to it. It just happens. We have an acolyte that comes in and lights the candles on the altar table. You just, somebody thought to light the candles this morning. That's a good thing, right? Do you understand what that symbolizes and the power that it has in our hearts and lives? It symbolizes Christ in this place with us this morning. Right here, right now. Not 2,000 years ago, not 10 years ago, today, in this moment, in this place. Now, our sister came forward and lit the candles this morning. And in a few moments, we're going to sing our closing hymn. Let's see, that would be Hymn of Response. I have decided to follow Jesus. I'm going to ask her to come forward while we're standing and singing, and then to turn around and stand here at the top for our benediction. I want you to focus on that light. Now, that's a physical light. I want you to look into your heart. Where is the light of Christ? And as she goes out, I want you to take that light with you from this time, from this place. I'd like to invite you now to stand as